Hey everyone, welcome to Eppo Diagnostics video. In this short video, I will briefly cover what are diagnostic checks, why did Eppo build them, and what are the different checks that your experiment goes through. To start off here, you'll see on the right-hand side on your experiment tabs, there's this thing called diagnostics, and you'll either be indicated in red or green that all of your diagnostics checks have passed, or maybe there are a few things to check into. So why did we build this? It's actually very common for experiment teams to run an experiment, get the data to their data team, and then a couple weeks later, after the experiment has concluded, the data team noticed that there was an issue with the original experiment setup and the test results are now invalid. How frustrating. And it's a very common issue. It's not something that's limited to teams that are just getting started with their experimentation program. Even titans of industry like Microsoft, who runs thousands of experiments a year, will see about 10% of all of their experiment results being invalid just due to sample ratio mismatch issues, meaning that maybe the original traffic splitting mechanism to split people into the different variants wasn't set up correctly. So in order to help teams create an efficient and healthy experimentation program, we've provided over a dozen different checks to make sure that you are getting proactive notifications to determine whether your experiments are valid or if they're potentially running into some issues that will affect your results. So let's click into one of these experiments that has a few issues with it so we can get some additional details on what the diagnostic checks are. The other thing that I'll add here is we also have a direct Slack integration and an email integration, so you'll be notified extremely proactively on a channel of your choice. There are 4 different buckets of checks that Eppo will run here. The first one being configuration checks. You can think of this as general experiment setup. Everything from just checking the date time window, making sure that we have data from the window of time that you've defined your experiment analysis should run, whether the experiment key may be mistyped from what you have in your table, and even just making sure that you have that data in your warehouse to begin with. The second bucket is traffic diagnostics that will include that sample ratio mismatch that I mentioned earlier, as well as dimensional imbalance. So if you are including dimensions to describe a user with traits such as browser type, device type, country, customer type, we will determine if there is an imbalance coming from a specific segment and we'll point you towards the problematic traffic segments as well. The third type here are metric diagnostics. So we'll make sure that there are successful joins between your assignment and event data, and also just to make sure that that metric data exists in your warehouse for the period of time that your experiment has run. And then lastly, we have data quality diagnostics down here. And this is essentially if there's any statistically significant difference in metrics between variants before the experiment even starts. Having these checks are great to have this sort of proactive alert if something's gone wrong, but once something has gone wrong, it could take days or weeks to even fix the underlying issue. Eppo will provide you a ton of helpful tips, everything from typical debugging exercises pointing you exactly to which table this alert is coming from, and we'll even give you Eppo's SQL that we're running to create this alert. So hopefully this has been an informative introduction to how diagnostics work at Eppo. For more questions and information, see our docs. We go through all of the checks in more detail, and we are looking forward to seeing what experiments you build in our platform.